Every virtue, if it is to become real in a man's life, rather than merely an ideal or an aspiration, has first to pass through the gate of courage. Courage is the gateway virtue. Not one among four equal virtues, rather, it's the precondition for all the others. Prudence without courage becomes analysis paralysis, the man who sees clearly but won't do anything. Self-control without courage becomes repression, the man who suppresses his feelings rather than integrating them. Justice without courage stays entirely theoretical, the man who knows what is right but won't act on it. Every virtue, if it is to become real in a man's life, rather than merely an ideal or an aspiration, has first to pass through the gate of courage. Winston Churchill put it plainly, courage is the first of human qualities because it is the quality which guarantees all others. That's not rhetoric. That's telling you how it actually works. So we begin here. In the first episode, I introduced the image of the forge, and I asked you to finish a sentence. The man I know I'm capable of being would... Whatever came up for you, that's the compass by which we'll be orienting ourselves, and to move toward that man, there is one thing you need more than any other. The Greek word for courage is andreia, which literally means manliness. It comes from aner, the Greek word for man, which we find in words like androgen and androgyny. The Latin word for courage is virtus, from vir, their word for man. So courage is manliness in Greek, and virtue is manliness in Latin, and the virtuous man and the courageous man are etymologically the same man. This matters because a lot of men have absorbed somewhere along the way the idea that the virtuous man is an impossible ideal, something external, imposed, and aspirational in the worst sense of the word, meaning unattainable. But St. Maximus the Confessor, writing in the 7th century, says something altogether different. He says the virtues are native to the soul, natural to us. The virtuous man is not an impossible ideal. He is the natural man. The vices are distortions. They are what's unnatural, departures from what a man actually is when he's functioning as he is meant to function. They drag us down from what we could be. They make us less. So that's the frame. The work we're doing here isn't about becoming something foreign to your nature. It's about recovering what is already native to it. Dr. Cindy Puri, one of the world's leading researchers on the science of courage, defines it this way. Courage is a voluntary act in response to a perceived threat or risk and in pursuit of a personally meaningful and often moral outcome or goal. So there are three elements: voluntary, risky, and aimed at something that matters. So it's not courage if it's not risky. If you've got no skin in the game, if it doesn't cost you anything, if there's no real possibility of loss, you're not being courageous, you're being comfortable, which is a different thing entirely. It's not courage if it's not important to you. The thing you're risking something for has to matter. It has to have moral weight, personal meaning. The stakes have to be real. Jumping out of a plane just for the thrill of it is a different act from jumping out of a plane to rescue somebody. And it's not courage unless it's freely chosen. When you're forced into doing something, your moral responsibility is compromised. Courage, by definition, is something you choose, which means that when you're acting courageously, you are choosing to do so. You are asserting something about who you are and what you value every single time. Aristotle puts the same point differently. He describes courage as the mean, the virtuous middle between cowardice on one side and recklessness on the other. The coward feels fear and collapses under it. The reckless man feels nothing, or pretends to, and charges in without discernment. The courageous man feels the fear accurately, proportionally, and acts anyway towards something genuinely good. He is neither paralyzed nor foolhardy. He's measured. This is important for men who have mistaken the suppression of fear for courage. Suppressing fear is not courage. Suppressing fear is actually the masochist's move, aggression turned inward, the man who calls his avoidance stoicism and his passivity humility. The courageous man doesn't suppress his fear. Instead, he walks through it. There's another reason why we begin with courage, beyond the logical one. In the developmental sequence for men, courage is related to warrior energy. And warrior energy is the first of the 4 masculine archetypes to come fully online as a boy grows into a man. It's what blossoms when puberty hits. That surge of drive and aggression, that urge towards independence, the need to go out and push against limits, to step outside the comfort zone, to test oneself against the world. This is natural. This is supposed to happen. But when it doesn't, when this fledgling warrior energy isn't supported, or actively suppressed, or simply has no place to go, it creates problems that show up years later. I've seen it for years in the men I work with. Failure to launch, lack of direction, inability clearly to articulate a vision or a mission for his life, a nagging sense of inadequacy. Remember John Eldridge's question in Wild at Heart, do I have what it takes? Poor boundaries, self-medication. The patterns vary, but the root is the same. Warrior energy that was never properly forged. So a lot of men need to start here. Maybe you need to start here. Not because courage is the only virtue, but because without it, nothing else moves. It's the gateway. And for men whose warrior was never properly developed or was wounded somewhere along the way, this is where the forging has to start. Robert Moore, in his book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, describes the warrior archetype. And if the word archetype puts you off, think of it as a pattern or a human potential, a description of what a man looks like when this particular capacity is well developed and rightly ordered, and what he looks like when it's not. The mature warrior in Moore's account is characterized by disciplined action in service of righteous goals, emotional regulation under pressure, protective instincts toward those in his care, and a commitment to excellence and to honor. This is not the guy who picks fights, but he's definitely the man you want beside you when things go sideways. Now, just like Aristotle's virtue is a mean between 2 extremes, the lack on the side of cowardice and the excess on the side of rashness, so also there are 2 shadow forms of the warrior. The sadist, who has too much of the warrior, who uses aggression for its own sake, domination, cruelty, force as an end rather than a means, and the masochist, who has too little of the warrior, who turns aggression inward to self-destruction, self-sabotage. This is victimhood dressed up as virtue. In my experience, men who embody the sadist are more the exception. Men who embody the masochist are much more common. That is to say, most men who struggle with courage are not struggling because they're too aggressive. They're struggling because they've turned their warrior energy against themselves in ways that undermine their own agency and sabotage their authority. And a footnote here. It's worth saying, the 4 archetypes are not independent of one another, any more than the 4 virtues are. You cannot embody the warrior fully without the king's sense of justice and purpose to direct it, the magician's discernment to guide it, and the lover's passion to sustain it. Moore's framework, just like Aristotle's, is a portrait of integration, not of isolated strengths. But courage is where we begin. So how do you build courage? The short answer is this: lean into your fear, push your edge, and stay there for as long as you can. The longer answer is that courage is built the way any capacity is built, through practice, repetition, and the accumulation of evidence that you can do hard things. Albert Bandura, the Stanford psychologist who developed self-efficacy theory, identifies 4 sources from which genuine confidence and courage is built. Mastery experiences. That means actually succeeding at difficult things. Vicarious modeling, which is watching other men succeed at difficult things and admiring them for it, not being jealous of them. Verbal persuasion, that is, being told by credible people that you can do it. And 4, physiological states, that is, managing the anxiety and stress that accompany really hard actions. The first of these 4 sources, mastery experiences, is the most powerful. And the way you accumulate mastery experiences is by starting small and stacking wins. Not small in the sense of trivial. Small in the sense of calibrated, achievable, and connected to something larger. That's why all the self-development literature tells you to break big goals down into smaller, manageable chunks that you can actually accomplish. Each one of these done adds to the pile, and the pile over time becomes a foundation. St. Maximus again, and this is one of his better lines, says, Demonon theologia dica praxios theoria. Theory without practice is the theology of demons. You cannot think your way into courage. You cannot wish or plan or research your way into courage. You have to act bodily in ways that cost you something. And you have to act now, not when conditions are right, brother, because the conditions will never be right. Before the next episode, one sentence for you to finish, and I'll say what I always say, don't give me the noble answer, give me the true one. One thing I've been avoiding because it genuinely scares me is write it down if you can. What comes up for you will be diagnostic. It will tell you something about where your warrior energy is stuck and where the forging needs to happen first. Next episode, the problem of inaction. Because knowing all of this, as I'm sure you've already noticed, does not automatically produce action. There is an epidemic of passivity among men right now. Educated, capable, intelligent men who know exactly what they need to do and yet will not do it. We'll look at why and what it takes to break the cycle. As you might expect, St. Maximus has something to say about it. So does James Clear. They do not, as far as I know, agree on much else, but on this point they're aligned. If you like what you're hearing, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to keep up with the other things that I do, please subscribe to the newsletter. The link is in the description below. I'll see you next week. The forge is open.